Hello everybody and welcome back to the Crooked Hour. Today we're going to be doing how to bet both ways on Roman Dolidze versus Nassourdine Imavov. Not super excited for this card, not going to lie, especially the big card we had and then having the weekend off and then coming back to this. It's a little bit iffy, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I would rather come back to something more exciting, but beggars can't be choosers. I'm just happy to have UFC back in my life. So yeah, I thought we'd dive into a little bit. Go figure out how to bet both ways on this fight. There'll be no full card breakdown from me from this card, just because I'm not the biggest fan of this card and I just do not have the time right now. But as soon as the next card comes, hopefully I'll have that full card breakdown. So jumping into this fight between Roman Dolidze and Nassourdine Imavov, it's a good fight. I think this fight's going to be tricky for a few reasons for Roman Dolidze. I think he's going to have a hard time closing the range in this fight. Against Nassourdine Imavov, he's a great wrestler in himself. Got great takedown defense. He's going to be a hard guy to get down. But the thing is, if Roman Dolidze does get him down, that's when Nassourdine Imavov could run into trouble. And if you're on the side of Roman Dolidze, you got to hope that he gets him down, because Nassourdine Imavov on the feet is a sniper. He's got a very good jab, very good kicks to the midsection, very good at maintaining distance, sort of that Israel style, but I'd say he's even more offensive than an Israel Adesanya. Maybe not as strategic, maybe not as defensively sound, but he definitely has that sort of poke style, but he puts a little bit more into his shots than somebody like Israel Adesanya. And he's not scared to go to grappling, although I don't think he'll be going to grappling here against Roman Dolidze. Going to the stats, Nassourdine Imavov has a height advantage at 1.91 meters. He's a lot younger than Roman Dolidze too, 28 years old for the side of Nassourdine Imavov, 35 for the side of Roman Dolidze. So Roman Dolidze is passing his prime a little bit. Nassourdine Imavov lands more strikes, is more accurate. Roman Dolidze has a higher takedown average, as you can see, and a better takedown accuracy as well. And their sub average is actually about the same. Now, I usually prefer to use UFC stats, but the site wouldn't work for me, so I just had to deal with ESPN stats. Now, at the start, I talked a little bit about how I thought this fight would go, and it's sort of pretty clear to me, you know, if Roman does get him down on the ground, that's when his chances are. But on the side of Nassourdine Imavov, he's not an easy guy to finish on the ground. I mean, if we go to his stats, he's got one loss by submission, no losses by KO, and a few decision losses. If he gets him to the floor, that's his chance. That's his chance to ground and pound, to look for those subs, to even steal rounds. If he can find a successful way to get Nassourdine Imavov to the ground, and he goes back to that well over and over again, he could start finding success just from control, because Roman Dolidze has insane control, and he's a freak on the ground, a freak in nature. I mean, what he did to Jack Hermansson was crazy, but you got to look at it. He did do that to Jack Hermansson. He did get him in that position. But before then, Jack Hermansson was picking at Roman Dolidze on the feet. And Nassourdine Imavov's a better striker than Jack Hermansson on the feet. And he's just going to be picking. And Roman Dolidze, he likes to run in wild boxing. And he does hit hard. But is he going to catch someone like Imavov? And I'd say no. So jumping straight into how to bet both ways, we're going to start with Dolidze. Now, if you're on the side of Dolidze, as I mentioned earlier, you got to be on the side of, I think he's going to get him to the ground. I think he's going to use his ground game to his advantage, and therefore you got to hope he can get him to the ground. And maybe you see something I haven't seen. Maybe you think he can, and I'm not doubtful he can. I just think it's going to be very, very hard. But I had a few bets, and I'll explain them all why I put them here. This is what I'd be betting if I was betting on Dolidze, which I probably will. Spoiler, I probably will be betting on Dolidze. I like betting on the underdog, and I like Dolidze a little bit more. I'm not a strategic bettor. I am here, but I bet with fandom. I don't know the word for it, but I bet as a fan, not as a strategic moneymaker. But I'd be going Dolidze via moneyline as your safest pick, because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, he could definitely get the finish via TKO or sub. That's covering that. But what if he does steal rounds, like I mentioned? What happens if he steals a few rounds, steals the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round as Nassourdine Imavov starts to get a bit tired? Because we have seen him a little tired before. He does slow just a little bit. And that's when Dolidze could use it to his advantage. But you might be saying, bro, what the fuck you talk about? You literally got Dolidze via round 1, 2, or 3. The reason I did this is because if you go through Roman Dolidze's fights, he's a very hot starter. He likes to go in hot. And I know this is like his first 5-round fight, is it? Especially in the UFC. 1, 2, or 3 is going to be his best bets. But then saying that, I could see him, getting the pressure on later on. So I think this would be more if you're expecting to get him down early, which could possibly happen. Again, I threw it in there more of like this could definitely happen. Not it's going to happen. So Dolidze via 1, 2, or 3. If you're expecting him to start hot, get those takedowns, especially if he gets him down the first round, that could be a big chance for him. When they're not slippery, when they're not sweating, when they're fresh, that's when he could tangle something up or just ground and pound him. I think that's very unlikely, but at least with this bet, you got round 2 or 3 as well that you can bank on. But another bet I like is Roman Dolidze via sub or KO. I like this one because I think it's eliminating the decision, which I think is very unlikely for Roman Dolidze to do. I think he's very much more likely to get a sub or KO. And this is covering every round, so you're sort of safe. So going over the odds, Dolidze moneyline, 2.25. Safest bet, he's an underdog. So honestly, that's the one I'd be going with now. But if the odds get closer as the fight gets closer, I'd be looking to jump on sub or KO. The odds haven't dropped for this yet on my sports book, so I'm just going to say it's going to be at about 2.90. And then Dolidze via 1, 2, or 3. This is if you're feeling a little bit, you might chuck a little bit on this, hoping he gets the early finish. That's more of a fun wild card, though. I wouldn't actually bet on that one myself, but something to consider, something I would consider. And, as the fight's coming up, I might throw a little bit on that. You never know. You never just know. So they're my bets for Roman Dolidze. Moving on. If you're going with Imavov, you're probably planning on to outstrike him on the feet, possibly get a KO, possibly win by decision. So I got bets to cater for that, my boy. I got bets to cater for that. So he's a pretty big favourite, and the only reason I put a bet through Moneyline, I usually don't do this with pretty big favourites, but he's not a massive favourite. But still, you really want to bet on that line for how close this fight could be. But it's your safest bet. What happens if he does KO him? What happens if he does win by decision? What happens if he does sub? I mean, he's no stranger to subs. He's got 4 subs in the first round. This boy can sub it up. Maybe Roman Dolidze does take him down and Nassourdine Imavov shocks everybody and switches position and chokes him out. That could happen. And this is covering that bet. But I think the sub's unlikely against somebody like Roman Dolidze. But the KO, I know Roman Dolidze's never been KO'd. Let me double check that. Yep, never been KO'd. This is covering if he does. If he's the first person to KO Roman Dolidze, it's unlikely. But the money line covers it all. I think he is going to win by decision, but he very well could win by KO. You got to remember this is a 5-round fight. So that's why I've got Imavov via KO. While I think the decision's more likely, I think the KO is going to be much more profitable for its chances. I think he could definitely get a KO here, especially as the rounds go on, picking apart, if you have Nassourdine Imavov chewing up your feet, chewing up your body, landing his jab on you over and over again, you're going to get tired, especially the way Roman Dolidze fights. Pressure, just goes for it, just swings like a fucking madman. And that's when he could get caught by a Nassourdine Imavov as well. So I do think the KO is a very good possible bet. And the line hasn't dropped for it yet, but I'm going to say it's around 230. Could be wrong, could be lower, could be a little bit higher. But I reckon to be around that way. So keep an eye out for that when it drops, or if it has dropped. Maybe think about planting a little bit on that. By KO, I think that's a very likely outcome for him in this fight. And I think it's going to be pretty profitable if it does hit. And then my final bet for Nassourdine Imavov is 4-5 or decision. This is another likely situation I could see. As I said, I don't think he's going to KO Roman Dolidze early unless Roman Dolidze is like really wild and he lands the perfect shot on him. I see him tiring him out, kicking his legs, his body, jabbing him in the face. They both get a little bit tired, but I think that's where Nassourdine Imavov is going to have even more of an advantage on the feet. And I could see him winning by 4-5, and if he doesn't get there, at least you're covered by the decision. I like that bet, I do, and I think it'll be around 240. Again, could be completely wrong, but I do like that bet. And that's one that if I was backing Nassourdine Imavov, maybe I'm not. I sort of gave it away a little bit earlier, but I think that's a good bet, 2.40. If you're on the side of Nassourdine Imavov via 4-5 or decision isn't a bad bet at all. Finally, I got the props, or should I say prop. I think this is going to be a shit line. at 1.20 or maybe even less. They like to fucking dog you on these lines. But it's understandable. Most fights do hit round 2 unless you got 2 big power hitters hitting or something shocking happens. But I do like this one. Chuck it in a parlay. You wouldn't chuck it on just the money line itself. I'll probably throw this in a parlay, have it with a bunch of other confident picks, because I'm confident the fight will start round 2. You know, Roman Dolidze could go out there and do his thing, get him down. But as I said earlier, it's very unlikely. I don't see Nassourdine Imavov stopping Dolidze early. So I do like this bet. I reckon it'll be about 1.20, but I could be wrong, could be more, could be less. So just to summarise, Dolidze moneyline 2.25, Dolidze via sub KO 2.90, Dolidze via 1, 2 or 3, 3.10. Going to Nassourdine Imavov, if you're on the moneyline of Nassourdine Imavov, 1.65, Imavov via KO 2.30, Imavov via 4-5 or decision, I'm going to say it's around 2.40. And then for the prop, fight to start round 2, parlay piece, I reckon it'll be at about 1.20. Now you might be asking, what's your bet? What's your bet on this fight, mate? I did spoil it earlier, but I would hedge it to Nassourdine Imavov. Nassourdine Imavov is my pick. You know, I think he's more likely to win using that range, using that offense, using that, you know, that pick and style, but he packs power too, and I think Roman Dolidze, when he rushes in, he's going to be getting caught by Nassourdine Imavov. I think he's going to be getting hurt at times, but not hurt in the way where, oh, I'm hurt. I think it's just going to be affecting him slowly and slowly, and I think that's when Nassourdine Imavov is going to start to take over, and I think he's going to win by either, 4-5 or decision like my pick said. As a bettor and as a fan, I'm going Roman Dolidze. I think I'm going to throw a little bit on him as the underdog, but overall my pick to win is Nassourdine Imavov. So if you're on the side, again, Nassourdine Imavov, I really do like that 4-5 or decision. The money line, not enough odds for me, and KO, what if he wins by decision? That's gone. So 4-5 or decision, might chuck a little bit on that. Or I might chuck some on Dolidze if I'm feeling like betting like a fan, not a fucking money maker. So yeah, that's been this episode for today. Sorry for being away for a little bit. If you follow the channel, just have some shit going on, being busy. But I hope to start coming back. I hope to make a video on Drew Dober versus Renato Malcano, how to bet both ways. So look out for that. And as always, guys, hope you all enjoyed. Bet safe. And as always, have a good one.
Give me 5 minutes, I'ma pull up with like 5 niggas. Give me 5 minutes, girl, I'ma be right with you. If you vibe it right.